Today on Gamer's Couch,
Apocrypha.
Hello.
The adventure card game.
Hello.
I'm not sure if it's Apocrypha adventure card game or the Apocrypha adventure card game.
There's no "the" there. It's
Apocrypha, the adventure card game. I mean, it's another adventure card game next to Pathfinder
adventure card game. Yes, totally. I will have the title correctly. Post-production is such a nice thing. Welcome to the couch. Happy Sunday. Hope you're doing well, have the beverage of your choice, and are ready to learn about this game and find out what we think about it. This is Daniel, my sweet hubby. I'm Sarah, the artist behind Pinselgeschichten and owner of this channel. We are both very much into board gaming, and we really like to share our collection one by one with you. You can see on the number of the Gamer's Couch episode here, we already had a couple of shows there. We, shared a few games with you. They're all in the playlist up above. There's an iCard popping up, and you are ready to go in case you want to explore further. Today, we talk about this game as per usual, rules and gameplay. First, we play a few turns, show you how it goes so that you can get a feel for it. We talk about likes and dislikes, have a thumb rating, and then have funny stories and experiences. And this week, there will be a teaser for Draw for Initiative. Next Wednesday, there's a new episode. You have to guess. And for this week, I have pondered all morning on what hint I'm going to give you, and it will be a very compressed one.
Okay. If you see me always glancing, and this is totally inside baseball kind of production kind of thing, I see that the camera I'm looking is slightly skewed, but I think the image looks right. So
if not, we're just a little tilted today.
Either that or this, I was about to say, or this episode is going to be a little bit weird.
We'll talk about a weird game. I mean, there's monsters and stuff, so woohoo! Let's start, though, with rules and gameplay.
Yes. So, Apocrypha is a cooperative game where each of you is playing as a saint, which is kind of a hero.
I can see your halo.
And you will playing through, story missions that are represented by cards and trying to, avoid one or more apocalypses.
Apocalypsus?
Endings of the world. Possibly worlds. Depending, whatever, whom you ever ask. So each of us is playing a different character. For this, I picked Dr. Z's as my character.
And we go to big camera because I want to show off Diana Jones, who's also called Nana Jones. And she's a high roller.
I'm an unlicensed necrosurgeon. And each of us has a starting deck of cards that we will draw, and then on your turn you will play cards from that in order to help you deal with whatever is going on. Typically, the game works in that you have a scenario, or even sometimes multiple scenarios that form together a full story. The thing we're showing you here is the Enter Here deck, which is essentially the tutorial setup that comes with the game, which is a shortened version of one of the missions in there. And in that case, I don't think that this is a spoiler, because if you open up this box, you will stumble across this very deck, and it essentially says, don't touch anything else, start with this pack, don't shuffle it, don't do anything, go to YouTube and watch the designers play a game of this, in hopes that you kind of learn how that game is played, although I
don't spoil anything.
I don't want to go there.
No opinions
quite yet. Yes, nope. It's a little bit rough.
But there you spoiled it.
Well, but that's what I'm using here to show you how the game is basically working. It's not that complicated, but it's quite rigorous on the phases you go through and the things you do. With your player's turn, you have a turn order of things or phases that you go through, and you kind of check each one to see if there's something to do. Sometimes there's nothing to do there, and once you are done, it goes over to the next player, and so everybody is playing a turn or doing multiple actions on their turn sometimes to get you going. Now, regarding to our characters, these have different gifts or different abilities. There are 4 basic stats in this, which are essentially body here, the green one, and these are oriented differently on the card, so I'm just...
As you can see.
I'm going through here. Body, mind, rage, and soul. And that's kind of the 4 core attributes that you can come with. There's also skills, which are just keywords at the bottom here. So I'm skilled in hacking, resisting, and studying, whereas Sarah is skilled in conjuring, hacking, and sensing stuff.
Yep. I can sense you're gonna lose. She's a high roller. I'm in character.
And that's and the setup usually works out by having some structure cards, or that's what they're called. So up here we have mission specific cards. In this case we have this structure card that says incarnate, and that actually tells us how to set up this entire thing. Now in this Enter Here deck, this is all pre-built. Typically, you have to do a little work to set up these stacks of cards for each nexus that you see, and I'll explain what that is in a second. But it also tells you some mission rules that are going on here. What are the minions, or at least there are some extra rules in here for the minions that are in play. But you also have this story card, the mission card, that actually tells you who you are fighting. In this case, this tells us that Minion A is the Man Cubs, and this is our big bad guy that we have, or actually multiple bad guys that we have to fight. And the structure card tells us how we win. So in this case, it says we win if the last of these 4 nexuses is sealed. Now, I don't want to spoil too much, but you can imagine there will be Man Cubs. Actually, there are cards representing these Man Cubs in these 4 decks. We have to find them and fight them, and by sealing the nexus as a kind of follow-up to that, we would win the mission. Now, this makes the game really flexible. So you will find in the full game that there's a different of these structure and mission cards that you kind of assemble to define how a game is played, which is actually something, and just a tiny bit I like about this, where you go into a story and the story tells you in one full sentence what is going to happen. And I'm making up something totally here, but it could be something like hide among the monsters when the hour draws dark, or something like that. And then you will find structure cards that one says hide, one says among the monsters, and the third one might say when the hour draws dark. And all of these introduce additional rules. So you have this base framework of going through the game by going from nexus to nexus and doing stuff, but each game is a little bit different because this mission setup and rules change, and sometimes they even change gameplay aspects or phases, how they're going on. But just so you know, this is a kind of simple entry to that entire thing. By the way, if you've played the Pathfinder adventure card game beforehand, you will find there's a lot of similarities here. And while I made the mistake of reading up beforehand, where someone said, well, this is quite different from the Pathfinder game, actually it's not at all. It's very similar in a lot of aspects, and I think there's more similarities than differences. But this is a spiritual successor to that, so that is not quite unexpected. So Now I say, pretend I'm starting the game with a turn.
Of course, you are the show person. I'm gonna draw my card, and I'm gonna be off camera. If I play something cool, I hold it into the camera.
I'll try to do stuff here so that you can see it. We probably won't need the entire board here, but...
What? We're not gonna play a full game?
So I'm starting the game with first drawing my hand, which is 6 cards. That is something that my character card here says. I leave the rest of the cards close by. Maybe you can see them here, which is my deck. And these are the 6 cards I have drawn. I have...
a bit further in.
Yeah, I'm just sort of...
No, I'm just saying.
So there's 2 very different types of cards. These are gifts. You can identify them by these matching symbols. They accord to my attributes, and I can use these gifts typically to make things easier or to pass a check that is asking for me to win over in this particular attribute. The second big thing are these omens. Which I can use to investigate a nexus, and that is our fuel that drives us through the game, going through this and checking out individual cards. But before I get to do anything, let me bring up this turn order card here and keep my deck, my hand cards close by. So this says we actually start with number 1, start. Here it says draw the top card of the clock. Actually, that is something that is defined by one of these structure cards. So this says star means the active player. So me start, draw the top card of the clock. The clock is this here, the Doomsday Clock. This is our timer deck, which will eventually, if we don't hurry up, run out. And, well, we unsuccessfully will fail at the game. Well, actually,
we successfully fail.
We successfully fail. We unsuccessfully win if we run out of cards here and have to draw one. So essentially, with every starting turn, you draw one of these cards here. So I'm drawing that one, and it's an omen. I get that omen, and that also gives us another purpose of this clock. This kind of ensures that you can do stuff. Why? Well, you need these omens, as I said, to investigate or to interact with these nexuses. So the clock kind of makes sure that you have means of going in there. Then the second thing is support. And now we might have to take a look at our cards. Maybe I can find something that is there. Let's talk about our cards in general. I hope you can see a little bit about that. So this says, well, it's a gift. This card has multiple purposes or multiple applications. I can discard that, and these symbols actually refer always to who is currently active or who is doing something. So I can discard this to boost soul, meaning I get to roll another die. We'll get to that in the die rolling section. But this also says if I'm in the support phase, I can discard this card and someone else, and that's the cross thing pointing in every direction, can heal up to 3 surge gifts, which is essentially a way to getting back cards into your hand. Alternatively, if I'm taking damage, I can discard this card to decrease the damage I'm taking. So this is just as an example of how these cards are structured. You always have a symbol that points at who is affected by this, then the phase this is relevant for, and then the effect, so to speak, that's up here. So I could discard this in the support phase if I wanted to heal, but since we just started, everybody is healed up, so there's no other great thing I can do with that, meaning I cannot do anything in this support phase. However, it could be now that Sarah has a card, and I actually don't know.
I do have a support card, but it only works for me.
Okay. So if Sarah would have had a card that says support and pointed at another player, she could play that in the support phase to support me, for example. So that's how you would read.
I can't.
That's how you read these cards. And there's no limit of how many cards you play. Just keep in mind that the card needs to be applicable, so you need to be in the right phase. And there's some additional rules to how many dice you can add, and that which also comes into play. But there's no hard limit that says you can only play 1 card each turn or something like that. So that was support. Then we go to the let's call it investigate loop, because you can investigate multiple times. To do so, you play an omen and then flip the top card of the nexus you are at. We are actually starting the game with these little standees here at the stadium. Each nexus, while talking about the nexus, has a doom phase. That is typically the initial piece that's up. Each nexus also has a little rule that is happening. So this says, if I am losing at something, I go to the end and then shuffle this nexus. Meaning, in the turn order, end is, well, obviously at the end. But I just said the investigate is a loop, so you could theoretically investigate multiple times. However, this effect would prevent me from that. So this says, essentially, if I'm losing, well, you're screwed. You just go to the end, shuffle the thing, and then your turn's over. It has also some other information, like what cards are in the deck. So there are two cards that you have to confront with body, and there's not confront with, but these are
body cards.
There are gifts also in here that we can try to acquire, and we'll see that soon enough. But there's also monsters in here, so-called threats, as well as, and that's what you do typically at the beginning, proxy cards, like archetype cards, that stand in for our main threat. So if we encounter them, that's who we are trying to fight. The Nexus also has a hope side, which has a different effect. In this case, says if you win, heal 2 cards and then flip it back to the doom side. So these things here have little different effects. Some have different artwork. So this says 666, obviously on the doom side, but only 60 on the hope side. So what I can do is I can play an omen, and I'll just go in. Since I have 2 omen of hopes, I'll play one. Let's see. Let's say I'm playing righteous anger. I investigate. For that, I sacrifice this card. I flip the Nexus to hope. So this is one of the ways how you get the Nexus to turn over, by playing a card of that particular, or an omen of that particular alignment. And then I get investigate the card, and if that is a threat, I get a bonus die when I assemble versus the threat, which comes at a later part. So I sacrifice this card. This goes out of the picture, and I get to turn over the first card. And it's everybody's favorite, the Death Heads, or Death's Heads, which I think
look like wasps.
I think they're the same same stuff that was in Silence of the Lambs, but I might have
the moths.
Maybe I'm wrong, but I think it's moths. So this is a threat. So this is something if I had a card that says I can avoid it, I could then avoid it and not deal with it, but typically avoiding means it goes back onto the stack and just delays the inevitable. Or I can confront it. In this case, I have to confront it because I don't have anything that lets me avoid it. So the next thing is we go into the confront phase, which has, again, 3 different phases: initiate, act, and terminate, where initiate is typically something that's on this card or on the Nexus, where it says, if you are in the initiate phase, everybody has to take a damage, or you get to draw a card, or something like that. In this case, I don't see any initiate, so obviously we skip that. Then we get to act. First, or acting means, in this case, how will I want to deal with this? In this case, there's a small set of symbols and numbers on all of these cards that refer to, the options I have available. So I could either do a rage test, and I need a target number of 15 to be successful, or I could do a soul test, and I need a target number of 12 for that. Now, we come back to our characters. If you take a look, my rage is at 2 and my soul is at 3, meaning that's the number of dice I get to roll. And this game comes with 6-sided dice in the color of whatever virtue. That's what these are called, these attributes. And you roll these. In this case, I would roll 3 blue dice, and getting to 12 with 3 blue dice is probably easier than with getting to 15 with 2 red-sided 6-sided dice. So I'm going to go with blue, meaning I choose to encounter this with blue stuff. Then we decide if someone wants to assist or if someone can assist. In this case, Sarah could assist me, so I decided to.
I just could for rage.
No. It's the.
Oh, you mean that one? Yeah.
So assisting means if there is either someone with you at the nexus, or depending on where the players are sitting, players have the option to help you out. Let me put the death's heads here for the moment. In this case, the positioning of these attributes is important. Sarah can assist someone to her left on a body check. Sorry, on a body test, or to the player on her right, and not talking about position at Nexus, we're talking about position at the table. So since we're just playing with 2, on her left and on her right, she could support me on green and red. And the top one means she can support someone who is at the same nexus as her character, and that we are too, with 4 blue. So she could assist with 4 blue if I would want her to. The number down here is actually the assist you can give to yourself, which is certainly interesting if you are playing in a bigger group, and so you're really good with soul then, and can do a reroll. Which means, what can we do with an assist? Well, with an assist, if Sarah would assist me, that means I get to reroll as many dice as that number says on the side. So in this case, I'm going for a soul check, blue. Sarah could support me, and that means I get to reroll 4 dice if I wanted to, or up to 4 dice if I wanted to see if I can get a better result. The downside to assisting is, and that's kind of the next step, it's called mutate, is that you will draw a random mutation card. Now, the starting deck just has 1, but it gets the thing across. There's mutations versus threats, which we have here, and there's also mutations versus gifts, where we try to get them. What happens here is, if someone is helping you, you mutate, meaning you roll a die and then do whatever's on here. And the lower you roll, the more terrible the thing is. Sometimes you lose cards, sometimes you lose omens, gifts, random cards, but if you roll a 6, for example, you get to reload a card, or someone else gets to reload a card, which isn't too terrible, because that means cards just go back into your deck. But you will get them back again. So that's the big decision. Do you want someone to assist you or not? But if they do, something terrible might happen for having monsters mutate.
Do you want me to assist you?
No, I think I'm good for the time being. Which then brings us to the assemble phase, which just means you assemble as many dice as you can roll. So I said I want to go for the soul check, meaning I have 3 blue dice as standing, or as it is said here. Now, since this is a blue check, let me see if I have another card that would help me with that. A soul check means I can play a blue gift, so that leaves the charm bracelet. I could discard this to boost soul, and I briefly mentioned boosting soul means I get another soul die if I want to. Then that's pretty much all I can do with this card. And just for purpose sakes, I'm doing that. So I'm discarding this card into my discard pile, and then something else happens. First of all, I'm getting a die, and then there's a very well hidden rule in this game that says if you play a card that adds dice and also matches some of the skills down here, so the keywords down here match up with the keywords on your character, you get to add so-called skill dice, which are colorless dice, bonus dice that will just add up to whatever you're trying to do. So in this case, I have a matching keyword called resist here. which says on my character, resist 1, meaning I get 1 extra skill die if I want to do that. And to be honest, little disclaimer here, I really hope that I'm explaining this right, because I am still not entirely sure after reading up on it.
We will talk at length about that.
But let's see. So these are the 5 dice I rolled. For any given check, you only select the 3, best ones or highest ones. So in this case, I have a 5, a 6, and a 2, which gives me a total of
13 on Friday the 13th that we filmed this. Is it 1300? No, it's later.
Which is just enough to pass this test of 12, which also gives me the win condition here says I get to heal 1. Actually, there's also the Nexus effect that says heal 2 and flip this Nexus. So let's flip the Nexus already. I actually only have 1 card in my discard, and heal 1 or healing means take a card from your discard and put it back into your hand. And that's also kind of implying that this deck of cards is not only the things or bonus stuff that you can do, it's also your life. You are playing away your life, so to speak, or you're straining yourself trying to get through these, moths in this case. By the way, when I mentioned skills, if the thing I'm facing here also has a matching skill to one of my skills, I could use that instead. You can only bring 1 skill to the game, so if this would have said study for some reason, I would have chosen study, obviously, to get 2 bonus dice instead of just 1 for the resist. But you don't always need to play a card just to get the bonus die. This just means that if the card on here has it, then you get to use it. What happens to a threat if you beat it? It goes the way of the sacrifice again. Goodbye, threat. So we just stumbled through the next steps here, which was evaluate and terminate. Actually, there's something else that can happen, and that is, what if I would have rolled lower than the 12 that I required? Well, then you get to take damage equal to the difference between what you rolled and the thing that hurts you. So if I, for some very unfortunate reason, would have rolled a 9, I would have to take 3 damage, and in this particular instance, it would have been 3 soul damage. Which means I have to discard soul cards first and then random cards afterwards. So taking 3 soul damage means I wouldn't have gotten this because I healed that back, but let's just assume I have this. I would have to discard this and then take 2 random cards from the rest here to deal with the damage. If you run out of cards in your hand, well, that's enough punishment, the game deems, and you don't take more. You additional effects will happen to you sometimes along with the damage, and they continue to happen, but you don't get to lose more cards. You don't draw cards from the deck to suffer more damage in this case. Next, terminate. We already had that. That's essentially just there's a win or a lose, and we dealt with the win conditions. Obviously, if you lose, something terrible else might happen. And then that was the full investigate step. I can do that again now, if I want to, if I play another Omen card. And since I still have another Omen card, I'm playing Starlight, which again is an Omen of Hope, turning our Nexus back again. And this says, flip your Nexus to Hope and examine 1, and then I may investigate it. So examine 1 means I get to look at the next card, and it's a gift, a rage gift to be clear. And yes, I'd like to examine. I'd like to encounter this card. Just to give you a quick idea of how this works. So this is a gift, so essentially this is a card I get to keep and play from my hand, like the other gifts I have, like these ones. And this also has a number value here that I can try to reach in order to get the gift. The thing is here, if you're successful, you take the card and put it into your hand. If you're unsuccessful, you sacrifice it, and well, that's 1 less card you could get to help you against the forces of evil.
Very sorry to interrupt, but can you lift that elbow? You're shaking
Nope.
the bottom, and that's gonna make weird noises at the mic. I'm sorry.
I am sorry. In this case, same would apply. I could not only decide do I want to use Soul or Rage. I have 4 dice in Soul versus 2 dice in Rage. So even though 13 is higher, I probably want to try to go for 13 with my 4 dice. I think I said 13, right? Or did I say 14? Whatever.
What?
13 is the number I need to roll. Mm-hmm. Sarah's not listening to what I'm saying.
No, you were mumbling, and I kind of blah.
And in this case, this actually matches one of my skills. So this says study, and I have study too. So right out of the gate, without playing any cards, I would get 4 purple dice and 2 white dice to go for the 13. And just for completeness' sake, let's try that. And I am very successful by rolling a 17, which means I get to keep this card, put it into my hand.
Sorry.
And then, technically you would go through all these phases again, but again, I have 1. I could heal something, although I still need to flip the Nexus back to the Doom side. I don't have anything that can be healed. I already have so many cards in my hand. And then we go further. Then we get to the end part here, which is Sanctify, Transfer, and End. Sanctify actually is something that you want to do more or less to win the game. Sanctify means you will close a nexus. So that is something you can only do if you meet the prerequisites. If we take a look at where is it? There. At the structure card, this says if you win against a minion, so if you win against one of these bosses, minions, you may go to Sanctify. So meaning if we encounter the thing here, and I think I think it's close by. That's another thread. So there's a card in here. It's the last one that says Minion 1, and if we encounter this one, we actually have to fight these guys. They have some special rules in play where it says if the Nexus is on the Doom phase, they're stronger than when it's on the Hope phase, and so on. But essentially, this card is a stand-in for this one, so we have to fight against that guy. If we are successful, we get to, if we want to Sanctify, and to Sanctify, you take a look at the Nexus, and it says down here, suffer 1 rage damage for each saint at this Nexus. If you want to seal this on the Hope side, I think it's a little bit easier because there it says you may sanctify it automatically. Once you sanctify, you essentially discard this Nexus card. You go through the deck here. If there's any masters in here, so minions are kind of the disposable bad mini boss guys. The masters are typically the big boss guys, and they're a little bit more difficult to get rid of, because if you close the Nexus and he's still in here, he will try to escape to another Nexus. So you see from the structure of the game, what you'll be doing is you're traveling around these Nexuses and trying to close them to remove opportunities for the boss, the final boss, to escape, to corner him and then banish him. Although this mission is different, and that's I think one of the good examples of how this can each mission or each structure can be a little bit different. Here our win scenario is we have to close all of them. So essentially what we want to do, we want to dig through each Nexus to find this minion card, because that minion ability here is the thing that allows us to close the Nexus. So we have to kill the man cubs in order to close the Nexus, in order to win the game. That's kind of the entire setup here. And Sanctify is just the step. Meaning also, if you successfully fight against the minion, you cannot go back to investigate because you already passed this thing. Well, technically you could go back because this says you may Sanctify. You don't have to go there. But if you go there, you cannot keep on investigating into the next player's turn. There's another way to Sanctify, and that is if you got rid of all the cards that are here in the Nexus deck, which then gives you a chance to sanctify and close your Nexus. So either exhaust all the cards.
Automatically.
Yes, exhaust all the cards, or kill the guy that allows you to close it. Sometimes maybe there's a gift in there we actually don't know that allows you to go to Sanctify to do that. This rule here also has another option, which is so the Doom side only has seal, but if the Hope side is up, you can actually guard a Nexus. That is, if you're familiar with Pathfinder, the way where you can keep the boss guy, the master guy, to escaping to certain Nexuses. So let's say there's another Nexus here, and Sarah would be at that Nexus, and I'm sanctifying, and there's a boss in here. Sarah can try to guard this thing, which then would mean that the boss only can go either to this Nexus or to that Nexus, but not to that one, which kind of makes it more predictable where they will show up, and that's kind of one of the planning things. Do you want to do that? And you never know for sure where they end up, because you'll shuffle placeholder cards in here, and which ones you take, and that's a kind of slight difference from Pathfinder. In Pathfinder, you would take the, what's it called? Well, we have the German version. This is it
Schergen.
Segen?
Yeah.
What's the English word for Segen? The blessings?
Blessings.
Yeah. You would take blessings to fill up kind of the missing pieces.
Yeah, I think you will use Omen here.
And here you use omens if you win against him, but if you lose against him, you take threats, which makes every other stack a little bit more dangerous. And just to go through here, transfer is the last kind of important thing. Transfer is the phase where you get to move if you want to. So in this game, I think it's the other way around in Pathfinder. You get to move first, and then you get to interact. And here you get to move after you have done all your investigation. There's an exception if you. If there is no Nexus, you get to move before that. So you will never start your turn, or at some point start at an empty place, and then you don't do anything, and then you move. So moving is just getting around these parts. And again, the mission structure will tell you where you can move. In this case, it's quite easy. You can move to any place. There's no set order, but I can already imagine that they will have missions where you have an escalating part of Nexuses. I always want to say Nexus Cs, but I guess
Nexi.
That's the wrong thing. Yeah, Nexi would be. Anyway, so the parts just to mix up the gameplay a little bit. Alternatively, you can also decide to stay where you are. So let's say we are here, and I want to stay in where is it? The back alley. Instead of moving, I can decide to give a card to another saint. Which might be beneficial if you're knowing, hey, the next player that's dealing with the thing that's coming up could use this. You can give them that card. And I like throwing cards around today. I'm feeling in a throwy bit. And that's you rinse, repeat. There's it's a lot of what feels like bookkeeping, busy work with those phases. But once you get the hang of it, it's not as terrible, I would say, specifically because some of these things don't happen depending on what card you encounter. Then you get a better feeling for when you can play the cards. It's in general, as with any game here, I would say doubly so. It is useful to take the effects down here very literal, meaning reading this as who can do something, when can it happen, and then what needs to happen and what happens as a consequence out of that. There's another aspect I haven't talked about yet because I'd like you to see these cards on the board, but actually there's these so-called soul binders in here, which is just a fancy way for this is glaring in the camera. Oh, it's actually just a part. So typically you have your character in one of these sheets, in the center to be specific, and around it is something called a halo, which is essentially upgrade slots for your character. And once you finish a mission, you tend to acquire so-called fragments, which are pieces of fluff story that also tend to give you specific abilities. So this one here has a fragment called The Birds by someone who needs to finish his book. I know. I think he doesn't like when he's being called out for because he wants to finish it too. But at least he finds the time to delight us with other text. So thanks to you, Mr. Rothfuss. So in this case, we have a memory fragment here, and that ties into the story, which I will give you some bits, I guess, in a minute. But these also have gameplay effects. So this says, in the evaluate step, I can sacrifice this card to flip all dice matching the target. So matching the target means I flip all the dice in the color of the check I want to do. Makes sense? And then I would get rid of that card. But until then, I could keep it in here in my halo. And so this means, first of all, I remember something from my past, and then I also get this special effect. And from, I guess, what you can almost deduce, there might be more permanent upgrades. This is just a card from the tutorial. Certainly, your character will grow. There's another card that goes in here, and that is less delightful, which is called Death. Technically, it's a vision of death, meaning it's a possible death that occurs to you, and that is what kind of limits your life. So, as I said, your deck is your life in a particular game, and if you run out of cards, you will fade from existence, meaning you get a death card and you need to put it into your halo, and once, first of all, that takes a place that you kind of cannot use, and secondly, if you end up with a lot of death in here, specifically if everything is full of death, you are dead, meaning that, well, not you, your character is dead, meaning that he goes to the back of the box, is ashamed of himself, and does not come back as easily unless you find something that lets you bring him back. So giving a kind of permanent touch. So not permanent in that case where you rip the cards apart. This is no legacy game, but you will be playing this game over quite some time. Let me free Dr. Z's here first. And you will build up your characters. These fragments will form memories not only of the fluff text that's on here, but also how you acquire them. And you may play the same character all the time, or you can switch it up as you like. Essentially, once you are done, you can share cards with your other players and build your decks. The only rules you have to apply there is, and that might also be familiar from Pathfinder, the attributes here say how many cards of a particular type can be in the deck, and you need to stay within those confines of that. And that's pretty much it. But that deck then gets stored. You put it into some deck box or wherever you want to put it, or behind a character divider. And that's how you enter the next mission. Something I have only briefly talked about is the story or the lore about this entire thing. I guess the best way to describe Apocrypha is... if you're familiar with a TV show like Supernatural or Grimm or a video game like the Secret World MMO, this is pretty much that. It's playing in in the present time, but it also assumes that you as the player, or you are called a saint because you have a specific ability. You can see monsters. Unfortunately, those monsters can also see you, and they don't like you.
I don't know why. I'm such a nice person.
And the entire backstory is built upon that there have been monsters in the past, and then something happened, and humanity, ceased to notice that monsters are there, and therefore are at least not under the direct influence of monsters anymore. But still, they are plotting and trying to bring on the end of the world in one or multiple fashions. So we as saints will travel around. The other downside of being a saint is that you are terrible with remembering things.
So Tina's a saint?
Probably. So that's where these fragments come in from a story perspective. These fragments are pieces of memory that you reacquire, which can be used. it's also something that's not tied to specific characters. So the proper way to actually end the mission is you take the fragment that is the mission card and then fill up some random fragments for all saints that took part in the game, and then you pick and choose who gets what. But so you can build out your character, and that gives you an opportunity to role play a little bit in here. Now I'm dizzy from talking so much.
You have to tell age and stuff, and then we can go into likes and dislikes.
Yes.
You can sip tea. I can talk.
Actually, this is at least in parts. I don't need to look that up. This is this game is from Lone Shark Games, so from Mike Selenka, who also did the Pathfinder adventure card game, which, as I said, is obvious if you see the similarities here. It is a game for 1 to 6 players. These mat here is, I think, for up to 4 players.
3, you said.
Is it 3?
Played it.
I think
the other one is there behind.
It depends on how many players are playing, how many nexuses are there. There's you can add a second map, and you just have more nexuses if you have more players. But from what I've seen, something like this clock deck stays the same. So while you get different people doing stuff, the timer is the same, and that doesn't change much of the mechanics. You just have more places to go, or sometimes the need to spread out and find stuff. But I don't want to lean too much into that because I actually don't know. I haven't read all the structures and scenarios that are coming up. I'm just thinking about what Pathfinder did, and I can see where this is going with that. Other things in terms of age, because I'm so old, I never checked it, so I'm reading this off. This is for 14-year-old werewolves, bears,
kids,
something and above. And I think it says it takes 60 minutes, which, if you know what you're doing, I think is fair game. I guess this leans closer to 90 minutes, but if depending on how many players and what's going on. Also, it is a game where you kind of have to go with the theme. And I mean with that is you want to read a little bit out what's on the cards, what's going on there, to live this weird horror thing. I think another thing that also would fit into here is something like Stranger Things, if you want a more recent show that's I think popular enough. So there's parts in here with stuff that's weird. Sometimes some feels like X-Files, some feels like out of horror tropes and or urban folklore. Having that and a whole bunch of monster art.
Yeah, and that is the perfect point to
go now to the tea part.
Go to your tea party. I'm gonna talk about likes and dislikes. So we got this game because we like Pathfinder, the card game, the adventure card game, and I'm very heavily gonna compare it to that. So get ready. There's a few things beforehand, for one, did we have Pathfinder on the couch?
I think so, yeah.
I think we did. If we did, there's now an iCard coming up that will show you the link to that specific episode so that you can have the comparison right away. Anyway, we like Pathfinder. I do a lot, and there's a few things here in this game that do things better or more to my liking than Pathfinder does. For one, it is the support mechanic with you can either let somebody reroll without having to discard cards or something. It's just on your character thing, and you can help out people there that are at your nexus and or on the left and right. I actually like that.
I think that's also one of the kind of the big changes, and that was my phone on the table that did the brum brum, which you probably will hear or see if the camera is shaking. Anyway, what I was about to say, this positioning part, who is sitting where at the table, and that you have a tighter bond with that without, as you said, having the need to make everything a card that you're playing.
that is something that I didn't really prefer, or that I wasn't too fond of. Your deck is your life, and it is very hindering then to always have to discard cards and not being able to get them back to support somebody else. Otherwise, you would try to kill a master like 5 times and cannot do it. So there's very many people that have to then discard cards and to help out. So I like that they moved it to the character sheet or to the character card in this particular game here, and that it is not only important whom you are with at a certain nexus, but whom you're sitting next to on the table. I like that a lot, and that was irrelevant with Pathfinder. I like that there's a certain actions that you can do that might include you or might not include you, might be for the player who's sitting across you or next to you or all of them or just you. I like that it just changes things up, and you have to think about, okay, which card do I want to keep on my hand for, say, player number 3, I definitely want to support him or her with this specific card, and the others I can spend on other players, or I want this particular action for myself. And so you have to think a lot, which means you're definitely occupied with things while the other players have their turn. It doesn't feel like downtime because you're always planning ahead, and since you are at least being able to support a player at 2 certain points in the turn order, you're always involved. You check your cards. Okay, can I, will I, want I, or maybe not. So there's conversation at the table, of course, co-op game, but you're also involved. You're not just waiting for somebody to finish their turn and then you hack at the same monster. Things like that. So I like that a lot.
I think it's also beneficial while talking about the character. And actually, I'd almost prefer if we would have started with not comparing this to Pathfinder, because it's like, actually, let's try that. Is there anything just specifically for this game, not in comparison to Pathfinder, that you like and want to talk about, or is it all?
It is
very similar to Pathfinder.
No matter if it's similar or not, but once you have your turn down, the certain steps, you can play so easily. It repeats itself, so you can take time and brain space to then enjoy the story, enjoy the artwork, enjoy your co-players, have fun at the table. You don't have to think, okay, what is now happening in this thing? Yeah. Once you have it down, you have it down.
I was about to say this is almost like a ride on a carnival, like a spooky ride or something, that once you get used to how you're strapped in and everything is going and you're on the ride, then you have enough time to look left and right to enjoy what
exactly. So that is no matter if it is similar to Pathfinder or not. One thing that I liked a lot also, no matter if it is close to Pathfinder or not, is these helping cards here. Yes, there's a lot of icons that come with the game, and they're only so intuitive in the beginning, but they did a very good job to really get the essentials for your turn printed on a 2-sided card. It is very easy to understand and stuff, so I like these cards. What I also like...
I have to say, I also like the cards, but for other reasons. I actually like how the cards are made. They are not flimsy, they're not
That
small.
was the next thing, going to production, to artwork and production value. I really like this game. The insert for a game like this is very sturdy. There's enough space where you can put further expansions or new stories, but you don't have the problem that you sometimes have with games like this, that unless you have a certain amount of expansions or later stories, the cards are pretty much flying everywhere in the box. Not the case here. I like that a lot. I do like this mat.
Yeah, but that's an extra from the Kickstarter. So
that is... You can definitely play it without it, but it is just a very pretty thing. I like the colors they used. The artwork is gorgeous. I absolutely adore it, and it tells the story while you play. And again, comparison, it didn't do that much for Pathfinder.
I think our one of the not complaints, but I think one of the disappointments we had with Pathfinder is that
they were flimsy.
It's this rich fantasy world, but the cards themselves just here's a picture of a sword, and
it didn't. I didn't know the story of Pathfinder, and it didn't really come through for me unless I read it up somewhere else. But the cards didn't tell it. Here, it pulls you more into the world.
The art is mysterious and funny, and the blurbs, the text that's on there they're really good.
Awesome.
It's
yes. I like my character. I like Diana Jones. She has an awesome little story on there. So I'm not sure what level you pledged, but our copy comes with a very special set of dice. Yes, it comes with the 5 colors, but
those are
they are mystically and magically protected against people like me that have Wheaton's disease. Man, did I roll well, and I'm gonna go into more details about that in the next section. But I like the size of these dice. They feel really nice in your hand, and that is something that for me personally does it does help having a wonderful enjoying time at the table when you play. Now, for all the good that comes with the game, there's something that really has to be improved with the game, and that is the manual. Not necessarily how it is structured, but the wording is not suitable for a board game. It feels like you're reading an very old German law, and I don't want to read laws and have to dissect them when I read rules. I want to read rules. So please use something else than a comma. There's wonderful punctuations, all kinds of things that you could use to have relationships or importance between two things that you talk about be told to the reader in a very easy way and not have to really dissect. We were very frustrated with that.
There's there's a couple of things I think I want to mention that
go ahead.
I'll tie this together a little bit. So I think one of the things, and that's neither, I don't mean this as a downside or upside to the game, but this game, the first time you played it, has a very mechanical feel to it. And with that, I mean, you notice that people sat down and then said, we need to build an engine that allows us to deliver packs of story, packs of content in card form by doing that. A game that has a similar field for me is Legendary. Legendary Encounters. Some of them succeed if the cards and the stuff on the card is good enough to draw me into the thing. With some, not quite. So
it's
for example,
more work
Legendary X-Men is for me more
Marvel. You mean?
Yes. The Legendary Marvel is more more on the mechanical side, where I look past although I like superheroes, but it very much goes into, okay, this is what can I do with this card, and it goes beyond what am I actually doing story-wise in this. Whereas Legendary Encounters really drew me in, and that was strong enough to do that. What I like about this is this manages to do just that the theming and the story parts are good enough to draw me in, which was, as I said, something with Pathfinder that wasn't quite there or not
we
strong enough.
hope for more, maybe.
That being said, I always like the base kind of gameplay of, let's say, Pathfinder or this system at all. The other thing that is very apparent is that in order to achieve this vehicle for the story, there are some parts that are very unspecific on purpose. You will notice then when we went through the Nexus that we encountered a minion stand-in card, an archetype or a proxy card, because those will change. I think in Pathfinder it was still that you had a card for that in there, so you had the minion as a card that's then shuffled into the deck. I understand where they're coming from, and I would still argue that it's an improvement to the game, even though it draws you a little bit out of the immersion. When you then say, hey, this is the stand-in card for the actual card that we are facing. But that also means that they don't have to print a bunch of cards for something that you probably only going to encounter or use once or maybe twice. So I think that's a very economical decision on that.
I wasn't bothered by those stand-in cards.
The other part is that the cards have to come with a lot of qualifiers and rules, meaning that they cannot get away with a very helpful text, but have to rely to a lot of symbols and using that. Now, fortunately, I think they did a really good job at picking the symbols and making them very distinct and easily parsable once you get through the idea of what that wants. But in conjunction with that, this game also introduces terms for things you might know under other names. Netrunner is a game famous for that, which then would suddenly rename stuff like your hand into your grip, which confounds people on a very deep level. And it's not as bad here, but with those keywords and the phases, the kind of the structure of how this is played, there's a lot of stuff where a word has a very specific meaning because it is very specific in the context of where you are, which can change depending on what you are playing. So you kind of have to be familiar with all of this to understand or grasp what's going on. Now, if you're playing this for the very first time, at least that's how I felt, I either overestimated the importance of certain keywords and always said, oh, this has to mean something. I have to look this up, and then figure out, no, it's actually not that important, or that's not relevant for what's going on here. But you kind of always have, or at least I was always on the verge of feeling I'm missing a critical rule here, and maybe everything
because we felt otherwise it is too close to Pathfinder, and we kind of heard it's not like Pathfinder.
It is like, but there's the change. There are changes from Pathfinder that are substantial.
Exactly, but we kind of felt off a bit because we estimate, or we thought there might be more difference to Pathfinder, and then we thought, maybe we read the rule wrong and stuff.
We were suspecting a change where none was.
What I was saying with the wording, there was a very specific section talking about the skills that you have on the lower part.
Which I said, disclaimer.
When you read the section, get a highlighter and
no, help.
I mean like highlight where there's actually a full stop instead of a comma. And sometimes it's horrible. And there's 2 or 3 sections in the manual where I was like, I'm not a native speaker. I can.
Well, that's your problem.
I can find more words than skill that would. For example, skill that would describe the same thing and then make it easier to understand what thing of the skill, the thing you mean. So I was very disappointed, and I was actually sitting here and fuming and saying, guys, either get a proofreader, there's agencies that do something like that, or get Grammarly. I mean, there's 2 or 3 sections in there that are really critical for what you want to play, and they're so horrible. The rest is written super well, but somewhere in there somebody really got lost in the way to really and these were crucial rules. I mean, this was not a side note where the grammar and the wording was so cryptic that you really need to have a diploma to get this right. And that is very frustrating because when you get the game at the beginning, when it's released, there's not a lot of heck of stuff to help you out with. And we were actually at 2 points saying we house rule this now and we check up on this later, because we were sitting there for maybe 30 minutes or something trying to figure out what it is with the game. And that is something where they really have to please rework at least parts of the manual there.
Yeah, but that's
and that was frustrating.
But that's what I meant with. I'm pretty sure, or I'm almost very certain that that entirely stems from this being designed as an engine and not specific to the scenario or the game, because those rules need to hold up against all different structures, scenarios that you might encounter, and I understand why it is that way. However, in certain instances, I think they are doing themselves a disservice by not including. So there's the manual with the rules, and you have actually examples next to them, and the examples should kind of help you through that. And I found some things are kind of understandable in the example. The unfortunate part is that the example doesn't explain everything that's in here. So I'm pretty sure that it doesn't even explain that you can add skill bonus dice in an example, and that is something where a sentence that says, well, if you are if you're assembling your dice and only there, you can add additional dice if your skill matches either the card you're fighting against, or a card you're playing, or a card someone else is playing, and you're done.
And that would be the perfect way to print. So, guys, if you at publisher.
Yeah,
at the publisher's office, you can stop and use his sentence. It's fine, copyright free. That actually explains that one section that was horrible.
There's people who can probably explain that a lot better.
Even better.
And I've seen Mike Salinka commented on this, saying essentially their worry was that you could run into a situation in another setup where this might be read or interpreted as you get to add dice after you assemble the dice, or you get.
But it says very clearly in the rules that you don't.
Well, that's the thing. It says it's clearly, but not quite understand. Well, at least I couldn't understand.
It says here when on the cards when you add dice. So it is very clear. So it's like I said, just some sections, but they were cryptic to the point. Yes, it's called Apocryptica.
No,
sorry,
it's Apocrypha.
Sorry, but it was cryptic to the point that at least I was very frustrated. And at the test game, where I'm the most patient person ever, I said we're gonna house rule this now. We're gonna look it up. At test games, I'm very patient to learn things. Second time on the table, I'm very, very not patient. But you might say now, well, there's videos out there, and the video comes with the game. There's another thing that's not helpful.
That's the other part, and I don't want to hack on this too much, because I think they already frustrating. They already got the message. But if you open up this game, you stumble across this pack of cards that says enter here. Don't touch anything else. Watch this video, and we'll set you up. Which is good and bad in a couple of things, but one for once is it would have actually been nice to have at least a card in here that says how to set this up. The video tells you how to set this up, but there's also some stuff in there where they're just assuming that you're doing that right. For example, there's a mention of there's this 12 card clock in here, but it actually does not say. Starting from here, these cards are the clock. It's one of the minor gripes, and it's certainly nitpicky. If you watch the video, you get that explained. However, what follows then is them playing the game, which is in theory fine, but I really would have liked to being able to see what they are doing, where they show the cards on screen that they are talking about, but sometimes it's just useful to look at the board and then say, okay, you can go there, and then explain the rules. The video is a good thing to have after you've read through the rule book. because you will have questions after reading through the rulebook. That's at least how I felt. But I also had questions after watching the video, which so you kind of have to go with both almost and watch them multiple times. There are alternatives which go into much more detail and are much longer. I just want to prevent you from being super frustrated by opening this, seeing this, and then saying, hey, there's a video, I follow that, and then I know how to play this game. This is not how it worked out for us.
Not at all.
Which
it's actually just before we decided that we would have this game on this Couches episode here. He was saying, so we had played the game. He had read the manual and watched the video, the short one and the long one. And then he had reread the rules. And then he said, and now without that one specific tiny thing where I'm very sure it is like that, but I cannot say 100,000,000% sure. But at that point, we felt confident to actually understand what that game is about. And it is just very tiny little things, and it is very it's not that it's difficult, not at all. I mean, the mechanics are kind of easy, again, very Pathfinder-y, so we're familiar with that, but there's just tiny little things that are crucial.
Sometimes
crucial
you're just
things.
stumped by a card. Or
and they might screw up your gameplay if you get that one little thing wrong. So we tend to make sure that we don't break a game just by being stupid.
However, I will turn this rant into something positive before we judge. I think it is also a great testament of how good a game is if it is good despite being held back by its manual. And I think we want to rate.
Yes, we do. 1, 2.
Yeah, I'm giving it a thumbs up.
I'm giving it a slight tilt because of the manual.
Now you might shout, what are you doing? You gave other games at least a thumb down.
That's what I did.
For the manual. The thing is, if you actually understood how the game is played and then read the manual, then it makes sense. So I'm pretty sure that's exactly what happened, where someone wrote the manual who knew how to play the game, and then I think either someone else gave up or did not look into how someone would read this, or maybe it's my language thing. I will take that burden on me and will not pull down the rating.
That is true, but by the amount of threats in the BGG forum, I'm saying no, it's not because we're not native speakers.
I also give it the benefit of the doubt because you could put that both sides. You could say, we are familiar with Pathfinder, the adventure card game, and
that also had the same struggles with the manual.
And with that, we already know how to play this, so this should be easier. But then again, or at least I went into this thinking, well, I know Pathfinder, now I must make sure not assuming things that are not here because it's a different game.
Exactly.
When it actually wasn't that much.
But still, you got to make sure that you don't assume things, otherwise you could play Pathfinder.
Yeah. All that said, we really love these types of games, cooperative, cards, improvement of your characters, and if
killing monsters.
If that comes together with gorgeous art, theme that is interesting and funny and enjoyable just to explore what's next, I think you got a pretty great game at your hands, and that's what I think it is. If you can get across the initial bump.
No, it's a hump. It's a hump bump.
Wump. I think you will have something that is at least there to guide you through a couple of very enjoyable evenings, either alone or with friends, and going through that.
I'm looking forward to the other stories. There's some writers there where I'm really looking forward. But let's talk about funny stories and experiences. Now, I said, I don't know, what did you pledge? These dice, my friends. Usually, if you watched a couple of these episodes, I'm really good at rolling dice very badly. I mean, I roll them very nice. It looks good, but the result, not so great. So weakness disease is strong in this house. We played the first round, and I'm very sure, though these faces here look like a 1 and a 2 and a 3, there's actually 5s and 6s only on there. And once my magic DNA on my hand touches those dice, they're appearing. Man, did I roll
one of the special dice where the numbers always stay in the same location, but you roll the die and then they just swirl around.
He was like, what are you doing? You're really rolling well.
First I was asking, who are you? What have you done with my wife? But
because with the 2 dice and on rage, so I had to beat 15. There were 2 red dice that I had, and I had maybe 1 or 2. I had 1 or 2 support dice, very, very little, and I said I'm just gonna go for it. So if not, well, I'm gonna take damage. So what? And I shake the dice and rolled in this wonderful tray that you made, and bye monster. So I really like those. They have to be pet. They have to be loved. I want them to be in every game.
But not
special.
Not
set.
too much, because then they get complacent, and then you just get the sad rolls.
Is there the same proverb or the same saying that we have "Zucker, Brot und Peitsche"? Is there something in English like that?
I don't know, but if you know Nietzsche, he said something about how to treat your women.
Your dice.
It's about a whip and
sugary bread. So bread with sugar on top. So being nice and being things. This is what I want to do with the dice. They have to work. I'm very strict about that, but I'm petting them every night that they give good numbers for me.
And I think I successfully pissed off people who know Nietzsche, well, not personally, but who know women, most likely personally, and
well, you didn't say it.
Enthusiasts for whips.
He said it.
I'm not sure if it was Nietzsche.
No, but you didn't make up that program.
By the way, here's your German lesson of the day. Zucker, Brot und Peitsche is the one, and the other is it's Nietzsche, not Nietzsche or Niki or something like that.
No, that's different. Nikki is actually a t-shirt made of felt.
It's a sound that the wet towel makes when it hits the face. Nietzsche.
Let's get into the teaser. Or do you have any other things other than the dice?
No.
I'm fine. Sorry. I have to read something for you. That was actually the big giggle. So my lady here is Diana Jones, the high roller. And blackjack, craps, Russian roulette, whatever game of chance you have is a game of skill for Nana Jones. Money isn't the point for her. Finding people with an unnatural edge is. People think she's a whale, but she's actually a shark. So I really like that. She's not talking like Dory. And these were the things that made me giggle. And then, of course, the dice, they were awesome.
We talked so much about the menu that I forgot. There's actually something else I like, and this is an improvement over the Pathfinder stuff, and that is the streamlining of the attributes and the skills.
Yeah, that's what we said in the beginning.
Yeah, I just want to contrast it. I understand that for Pathfinder you want to follow up that, obviously pen and paper feel of having individual skills and leveling them up and getting better dice, but too many different dice, not really.
These dice, you want these dice.
No, there's not. While I don't mind rolling a D20 or a D4. It's
anything but a D8.
It's unnecessary, kind of having these different dices for that. And here I like this. It's rather simple. You only have 4 main attributes. You don't have 1,000 things that you can cross off or consider when upgrading your character. For that, you have this Halo Soulbinder thing to upgrade them, and obviously your deck. I think with Pathfinder, it's a little bit nicer that they the focus was more on the character progression sheet, and here the focus is again a little bit more on the cards in your deck.
On the story that comes with those fragments, But it's time to give you a teaser. So next Wednesday, 9 a.m. CET, there will be a new video on this channel, and it will be a painting of experiences that Tina and I, my co-producer, had with playing a certain game. And the game is, my love, you have to guess, and you only get 2 words today.
It's Trivial Pursuit.
No.
Because I have to guess.
Shh. Jungle Bingo. And he's stroking the beard. Da, da, da. The thoughts run free.
Is it a game where everybody could do the same but doesn't?
Yes.
Is it a game where someone is the custodian of revealing?
Yes.
Is it a game where you get fat loot?
Yes.
So there you have it. Hope you enjoy Treasure Hunter next Wednesday. No?
No. Not really, but maybe. Who knows? They have to find out.
Well, you will probably be very interested if you are still below a certain age. Although that is for that game not as necessary.
No, you can be,
But it's more for people who typically cater to the smaller man in the chat.
I'm small.
No, the other way around.
I'm small.
I see.
So they cater to me.
The smaller person in the old fart.
Old fart? Smaller person. No, my love, do the outro, and then we can leave the folks to the rest of the day.
Thanks for checking in with us on this special Friday the 13th episode.
Because we go out tomorrow.
Of Apocrypha, and I don't care if you like or dislike what we said about the game, but I enjoy that you took the time of watching us. If you want to see us again, you can do so maybe next week. If you want to see both of us when we talk about another game. If you just want to see Sarah, you can check out all the videos of her channel, which are about painting, or you can get the double pack of Sarah and Tina, where they are drawing stuff about board games, or better said, how we play board games here. Sometimes, I guess that's an apt description in Draw for Initiative. Now that you know what the next episode of Draw for Initiative is going to be about, you will eagerly wait in front of your computer, hitting F5 until it is released, which is on Wednesday. Don't forget to eat something in the meantime. If you are so inclined, you can like this video by doing the button, or you can dislike it by doing this button, or you can go to BGG, which is Board Game Geek, to check out our geek list. Called Gamers Couch, or the Geek List for Draw for Initiative. There's enough ways to reach us and talk to us. You can either comment below this video or on BGG. I will at least read them before I decide if I ignore them or answer them. No, typically I answer. Sometimes Sarah answers. Sometimes I have to answer in front of Sarah, or answer to Sarah.
You have to do that all day long. You have to
not related to possible comments or not.
No.
Anyway, thanks again for staying with us. Wish you a happy rest of the Sunday, and if you're watching this on a Sunday, obviously. And if you get to pick up Apocrypha, have fun with it, and see you next time. Goodbye.
Bye.